Hi everyone, welcome back to KG Graves. We're at Brownsville Cemetery in West Windsor, Vermont, USA, and we're here to visit the grave of Charles Bronson and Jill Ireland. Now you'll know Charles Bronson from a lot of famous movies, including The Great Escape, Death Wish, The Magnificent Seven. More information about Charles coming up shortly. Thanks for watching.
Talking with Richard Attenborough and Charles Bronson. We have one of those awkward little short segments here, and then we'll meet your wife. It's interesting. I have a feeling you're a man of great contradictions, because I know you paint, which is a fairly placid activity, I suppose, compared to some of the things.
Placid, not for me, Christ.
Huh?
No.
But I meant by that the difference between that and things that you always read about. You're picking up a director and shaking him by the neck and things like that are more active.
Yeah, I know. There are a lot of stories like that, and most of them are not true. Right. I used to like Richard when he was an actor, but now that he's a director, I don't know.
He's in a whole new light now. What had the poor Swiss gentleman done to you?
He just ruined the entire picture. I mean, there's a time element and money element involved. When a director takes so much time trying to push something that's, I think, is stupid, the interpretation of a script, and you stand there and you argue with him and you show them all the ways that it should be done rather than the way he wants to do it, and still he can't understand it, only because he's got it laid out his way. That's being thick.
How long will you let people bug you before you actually go after them?
I'm not violent.
No.
No, I used to be, but not now.
Since
I met my wife, I've become so peaceful. You wouldn't believe it, yeah.
Jill Ireland. You walk with her. How are you?
I'm fine. He's been sitting here telling you terrible stories.
Is he?
Yes, about how calm he is and how the stories about him aren't true.
Whereas, in fact...
They are true.
What, did I punch the horse?
No, you didn't do that, but you did do some of the other things.
Did he or...
He's not quite the calm, peace-loving person
I suspected this, but I didn't know...
Actually, he's on very
Didn't know
good
how to put
behavior
it.
tonight.
He's being very nice tonight?
He's being very nice.
Charles Bronson was born Charles Dennis Bukinski on the 3rd of November 1921 in Ehrenfeld, Pennsylvania, USA, to parents Walter and Mary. He was the 11th of 15 children. When interviewed in 1973, Charles said that he did not know his father very well and was not sure if he loved or hated him, adding that all he could remember about him was that whenever his mother announced his father was coming home, the children would hide. In 1933, after his father died of cancer, he went to work in the coal mines, first in the mining office and then in the mine itself. He later said he earned $1 for each ton of coal that he mined. He later recounted that he and his brother engaged in dangerous work removing stumps between the mines and that cave-ins were common. The family suffered extreme poverty during the Great Depression, and Charles recalled going hungry many times. His mother could not afford milk for his younger sister, so she was fed warm tea instead. He said he had to wear his elder sister's dress to school for lack of clothing. He was the first member of the family to graduate from high school. Charles worked in the mines until enlisting in the United States Army Air Forces in 1943 during World War II. He served in the 760th Flexible Gunnery Training Squadron and in 1945 as a Boeing B-29 Superfortress aerial gunner with the Guam-based 61st Bombardment Squadron within the 39th Bombardment Group, which conducted combat missions against the Japanese home islands. He flew 25 missions and received a Purple Heart for wounds received in battle. After the end of World War II, Charles did odd jobs until a theatrical group in Philadelphia hired him to paint scenery, which led to acting in minor roles. He later shared an apartment in New York City with Jack Klugman, who was an aspiring actor at the time. Eventually he moved to Hollywood, where he enrolled in acting classes at the Pasadena Playhouse. In his early career, Charles was still credited as Charles Bukinski. He has appeared in so many films, and I will try and include as many as I can fit into this video. I hope it doesn't make it too repetitive. His first film role, an uncredited one, was as a sailor in You're in the Navy Now in 1951. Other screen appearances in 1951 were The Mob and The People Against O'Hara. In 1952, he acted in Bloodhounds of Broadway, Battle Zone, Pat and Mike, Diplomatic Courier, My Six Convicts, The Marrying Kind, and Red Skies of Montana. That year on television, he boxed in a ring with Roy Rogers in Rogers' show Knockout. He also appeared on an episode of The Red Skelton Show and with Lee Marvin in an episode of Biff Baker USA, an espionage series on CBS. In 1953, he played Igor, the sidekick of Vincent Price in the horror film House of Wax. In the US, the film reached the 4th place on the highest box office of that year. That same year, he had roles in The Clown and Off Limits. In 1954, he appeared in Riding Shotgun and on television in an episode of Treasuring Men in Action. He also acted in the films Apache, Tennessee Champ, Miss Sadie Thompson, Crime Wave and Drumbeat. Also in 1954, during the height of the Red Scare and the House Un-American Activities Committee HUAC proceedings, he changed his name from Bukinski to Bronson at the suggestion of his agent, who feared that a Russian surname might damage his career. In 1955, Charles acted in Target Zero, Big House USA and Jubal. That year on television, he played a lead in an episode of the anthology drama series DuPont Cavalcade Theatre. In 1956, he acted in Run of the Arrow and on television in an episode of Medic and Alfred Hitchcock Presents. In 1957, Charles was cast in the Western series Colt 45. He had the lead role in the crime drama The Sheriff of Cochise. He appeared in 5 episodes of Richard Boone's Have Gun Will Travel, 1957 to 63. He guest starred in the short-lived CBS situation comedy Hey Gina. In May 1958, Charles played the lead role in the biopic of a real-life gangster, Machine Gun Kelly, and in June in Showdown at Boot Hill. On television, he appeared as Butch Cassidy on the television western Tales of Wells Fargo. The following July, Gang War started its theatrical run. Charles plays the lead as a Los Angeles high school teacher who witnesses a gangland killing and agrees to testify, not realizing this will cause retaliation. On the 10th of October, ABC's series Man with a Camera premiered. Charles played the lead, in which he portrayed Mike Kovac, a freelance crime-fighting photographer in New York City. The show lasted 2 seasons until 1960. In November, When Hell Broke Loose premiered. In 1959, he had a supporting role in an expensive war film, Never So Few, and on television in Yancey Derringer and U.S. Marshal. In 1960, in John Sturgis's The Magnificent Seven, he played one of 7 gunfighters taking up the cause of the defenseless. According to co-star Eli Wallach, during filming, Bronson was a loner who kept to himself. He received $50,000 for the role. The film was a domestic box office disappointment, but it proved to be such a smash hit in Europe that it ultimately made a profit. In 1960, he acted in an episode of the programmes Riverboat, The Islanders and Laramie. He played a recurring role in the 2nd season of Hennessy. In 1961, Charles played supporting roles in Master of the World, A Thunder of Drums and X-15. On television in One Step Beyond, and he starred alongside Elizabeth Montgomery in a Twilight Zone episode named 2. He was nominated for an Emmy Award for his supporting role in an episode entitled Memory in White of CBS's General Electric Theatre. In 1962, acted in the Elvis Presley film Kid Galahad. In 1963, in The Great Escape, he was part of an ensemble cast who played World War II prisoners of war. The film received acclaim. On review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, the critics' consensus reads, with its impeccably slow-building story and a cast for the ages, The Great Escape is an all-time action classic. It grossed $11.7 million at the box office on a budget of $4 million. It became one of the highest-grossing films of 1963 and was nominated for Best Picture at the Golden Globe Awards. Also that year, he played a villain in Four for Texas and on television in the series Empire, and he acted in the 1963-64 television season of the ABC Western series The Travels of Jamie McFeeters. In 1964, he guest starred in an episode of the Western TV series Bonanza. In 1965, he acted in Guns of Diablo and Battle of the Bulge. That year in television, in the 1965-1966 season, he guest starred in an episode of The Legend of Jesse James. He was cast as Velasquez, a demolitions expert, in the third season of ABC's World War II drama Combat. In 1966, he played a central character in This Property is Condemned and The Sandpiper. In 1967, in Robert Aldrich's The Dirty Dozen, Charles was part of an ensemble cast who played GI prisoners trained for suicide mission. The Dirty Dozen was a massive commercial success. In its first 5 days in New York, the film grossed $103,849 from 2 theatres. Produced on a budget of $5.4 million, it was one of the fastest grossing films at the time. That year on television, he guest starred in ABC's The Fugitive. In 1968, Charles made a serious name for himself in European films. He was in Villa Rides. Another European success was Sergio Leone's spaghetti western, Once Upon a Time in the West, where he played one of the leads. In Italy, the film sold 8,870,732 tickets. In the United States, it grossed $5,321,508 from 3.7 million ticket sales. It sold a further 14,873,804 admissions in France and 13,018,414 admissions in Germany. The film is regarded as one of the greatest westerns of all time and one of the greatest films of all time. Leone called Charles the greatest actor I have ever worked with. Also that year, he acted in Guns for San Sebastian and in Duck You Sucker. In 1970, he played lead roles in Lola, You Can't Win 'Em All, Violent City, Cold Sweat, and Rider on the Rain. In 1971, he acted in Someone Behind the Door and Red Sun. In 1972, Charles was in The Valachi Papers, Chatto's Land, and The Mechanic. In 1973, he was in The Stone Killer and Chino. This year, Charles was the world's top box office attraction and commanded $1 million per film. In 1974, Charles's most famous role came at age 52 in Death Wish, his most popular film. He played Paul Kersey, a successful New York architect who turns into a crime-fighting vigilante after his wife is murdered and his daughter sexually assaulted. This movie spawned 4 sequels over the next 2 decades, all starring Charles. Many critics were displeased with the film, considering it an immoral threat to society and an encouragement of antisocial behaviour. The film was the 20th highest grossing film in the US that year, making $22 million at the box office. Also that year, he played the lead in Mr. Majestic. In 1975 he starred in Breakout, Break Heart Pass and Hard Times. In 1976 he did a western comedy From Noon Till 3 and St Ives. In 1977 Charles acted in Radon Entebbe. At the Golden Globe Awards it won Best Television Movie. At the Emmy Awards it was nominated for Outstanding Special, Drama or Comedy, as well as winning and receiving nominations in other categories. Also that year he was in The White Buffalo and Telephone. In 1979 he was in Love and Bullets, and in 1980 in Borderline and Cabo Blanco. In 1981 he was in Death Hunt. Charles was paid $1.5 million to star in Death Wish 2. In the story, architect Paul Kersey, Charles, moves to Los Angeles with his daughter. After she is murdered at the hands of several gang members, Kersey once again becomes a vigilante. He was then in 10 to Midnight 1983, The Evil That Men Do 1984, Death Wish 3 1985, and Murphy's Law, Act of Vengeance and The Delta Force, all in 1986. More typical of this period were 4 action films: Assassination 1987, Death Wish 4, The Crackdown 1988, Messenger of Death 1989, and Kinjite Forbidden Subjects, also 1989. In 1991 he acted in The Indian Runner, and in ABC's TV movie Yes, Virginia, There Is a Santa Claus. In 1993 he was in the CBS television film Donato and Daughter, and in the television film The Sea Wolf. Charles's last starring role was in the 1994's Death Wish 5, The Face of Death. From 1995 to 1999 he acted in a trilogy of TV movies as Commissioner Paul Fane, the patriarch of a family of law enforcers. They were Family of Cops 1995, Breach of Faith, A Family of Cops 2 1997, and Family of Cops 3 1999. Charles's health deteriorated in his later years, and he retired from acting after undergoing hip replacement surgery in August 1998. Charles died at age 81 on the 30th of August 2003 at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. Although pneumonia and Alzheimer's disease have been cited as his cause of death, neither appears on his death certificate, which cites respiratory failure, metastatic lung cancer with secondary chronic obstruction pulmonary disease and congestive cardiomyopathy as the causes of death. In his personal life, his first marriage was to Harriet Tendler, who he met in 1947 when both were at acting school in Philadelphia. They had 2 children, Suzanne and Tony, before divorcing in 1965. She was 18 years old when she met the 26-year-old Charles Bukinski. He was then married to English actress Jill Ireland from the 5th of October 1968 until her death in 1990. He had met her in 1962 when she was married to Scottish actor David McCullum. At the time, Charles, who shared the screen with McCullum in The Great Escape, reportedly told him, "I'm going to marry your wife." The Bronsons lived in a Bel Air mansion with 7 children, 2 by his previous marriage, 3 by hers, one of whom was adopted, and 2 of their own, Zalika and Katrina, the latter of whom was also adopted. After they married, she often played his leading lady, and they starred together in 16 films. They spent time in a colonial farmhouse on 260 acres in West Windsor, Vermont. On the 18th of May 1990, aged 54, after a long battle with breast cancer, Jillireland died of the disease at their home in Malibu, California. In the 1991 television film Reason for Living, the Jill Ireland story, Charles was portrayed by actor Lance Henriksen. On the 27th of December 1998, Charles was married for a third time to Kim Weeks, an actress and former employee of Dove Audio who had helped record Jill Ireland in the production of her audiobooks. The couple remained married until Charles's death in 2003. He has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. In total, he performed in 84 films between 1951 and 1994, and in 16 TV programs between 1955 and 1999. Now let's look at Charles's second wife, Jill Ireland, who is interred with him. Jill Dorothy Ireland was born on the 24th of April 1936 in Hounslow, southwest London, to parents John and Dorothy. She was educated at Chatsworth Junior School in Hounslow. She began acting in the mid-1950s with small roles in films such as Simon and Laura, 1955, and Three Men in a Boat, 1956. She appeared with first husband David McCullum in 5 episodes of The Man from U.N.C.L.E. between 1964 and 1967. Jill appeared in 16 films with second husband Charles Bronson between 1970 and 1987. The last of these films, Assassination, 1987, was her biggest role, with Jill playing the First Lady of the United States and Charles a Secret Service agent assigned to protect her. In 1957, Jill married actor David McCullum, whom she met while working on Hell Drivers. They had 2 sons, Paul and Valentine, and adopted a third, Jason. They separated in 1965 and divorced in 1967. Jason McCullum died of a drugs overdose in 1989. In 1968, she married Charles Bronson. She met him when he and McCullum were filming The Great Escape, 1963, some years earlier. Together they had a daughter, Salika, and adopted a daughter, Katrina. They remained married until her death in 1990. Jill was diagnosed with breast cancer in 1984. After her diagnosis, she wrote 2 books, Lifelines and Life Wish, chronicling her battle with the cancer. At the time of her death, she was writing a 3rd book and became a spokeswoman for the American Cancer Society. In 1988, she testified before the US Congress about medical costs and was given the American Cancer Society's Courage Award by President Ronald Reagan. On the 18th of May 1990, Jill died of breast cancer at her home in Malibu, California. She was cremated and her ashes were placed in a walking cane which Charles Bronson had buried with him when he died in 2003. For her contribution to the film industry, Jill Ireland has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame at 6751 Hollywood Boulevard. In 1991, she was portrayed by Jill Clayburgh in the made-for-television film Reason for Living, the Jill Ireland Story. The film, which was based on her memoir Lifelines and listed her posthumously as an executive producer, received mixed reviews from critics. Jill appeared in 36 films between 1955 and 1987 and 20 television programs between 1959 and 1991. Sadly, Jill's name is not on the grave. Let's see where their grave is located. So there you have it, the grave of Charles Bronson in Jillireland. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. Leave your comments below. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.